Hello, NATR346. This is a quick video that follows up on an announcement I just put out about some new content for this week leading up to the midterm at the end of this week. I'm recording this on October 3rd. So I added a couple of important things to the groundwater unit to kind of round that out before we move off that topic. So here I am in the modules part. I'm clicking on groundwater hydrology, and I added this page with these weird terms, flood MAR and SGMA. I want to start with SGMA. SGMA, SGMA, is an acronym for the Sustainable Groundwater Management Act. And I'm making a big deal of this because this act really has fundamentally changed the way groundwater is going to be managed in California. California has been a little bit behind on managing groundwater up till this act. Basically, if you owned some property, you had quite a lot of right to the groundwater beneath that property. We do have a unit coming up on water law and water rights, and we'll get into this in more detail. But suffice it to say that, yeah, before this act, you could just drill a well on your property and pump like crazy, draw the water table down, maybe your neighbor's wells then dry up, and you end up going to court. So we've had about a century of pumping wars and litigation and the courts deciding whose groundwater is whose. And finally, in 2014, our legislature passed this act, and it really has fundamentally changed the way groundwater is managed. So I have a 2-page fact sheet. I just want you to be aware of what this act does. And in a nutshell, it calls for California to form groundwater sustainability agencies, or GSAs. And these GSAs have to come up with plans to demonstrate to the state of California that they're managing groundwater sustainably. And we've gone into that in some gory detail already. What sustainable management is quantitatively. Like if groundwater is thought of as a bank account, that you're not pulling out more groundwater than you're allowing to put in, or that you're putting in on purpose. That's one way to look at it. A more broad term, it's in this fact sheet, is how they define sustainability here. What is sustainability? In the context of water, sustainability means managing our water resources to meet the needs of today, drinking water, farming, the environment, while not impacting the ability of future generations to also meet their needs. That's a very general term, description or definition of sustainability, but I think it's a good one to keep in mind. This is a very bold act because it defines what sustainability is, and it calls on agencies to form. These groundwater sustainability agencies may be like a county, like Butte County, that covers Chico in that area, is a groundwater sustainability agency, and they are having to come up with plans to show California that they're going to manage their groundwater sustainably. And there's a couple of hundred of these groundwater sustainability agencies across the state. Some are large, some are small, but they all have the same burden to demonstrate how they're going to manage groundwater sustainably. Some of these things, last thing I want to mention is the main negative impacts that are happening to groundwater and how each sustainability agency has to show how they're going to avoid these impacts. And there's 3 of them here laid out here. Subsidence, we've mentioned. If you pump the groundwater out faster than it's coming in, then the water table drops and the land can compress and actually subside and lower. If you are near the ocean and you pump the groundwater too hard on the inside, it encourages the seawater to intrude into the land, and salty water is not very useful for drinking or for irrigating or for anything else. And there's other things, other groundwater degradation of quality that can occur when you're pumping. So give this fact sheet a look. It's a very big law. It's a very big change in California, how it's being managed. There's lots and lots of work going on right now in preparing groundwater sustainability plans. And so, and here's a website if you want to know more about it. I also want to introduce you to this program that's going on in California called Flood MAR. So MAR is an acronym for Managed Aquifer Restoration, which we've talked about groundwater banking, taking surface water that we might have to spare, so to speak, and getting it in the ground to store, using groundwater like an underground reservoir. And here's a paper. It's much longer than the Sigma fact sheet, but it's an interesting read here. I'd like you to check it out up to, say, chapter 4, so that chapter 1 here just gives an introduction. Chapter 2 gives an outline of why this kind of program is needed. Chapter 3 describes what FloodMAR is. And chapter 4 talks about, these are just a few pages each, talks about the benefit of using floodwater to manage, to get, to recharge the aquifers. So, one of the things you'll see in this document is that there's an emphasis on using farmland to recharge groundwater. And farmers are stepping up and they're interested in sustainable use of groundwater, and they're interested in helping out with this program. And so they're actually volunteering to use their agricultural fields as recharge areas. Sometimes the ag fields aren't ideal for this, depending on the soils. You can imagine a nice gravelly area would be perfect to put water on and encourage it to infiltrate and percolate and recharge groundwater. But practically speaking, we already have canals and pipes that deliver water to these fields. And so, in a nutshell, the essence of this program is to basically flood irrigate agricultural fields in the wintertime. Farmers obviously don't need to irrigate in the winter. The evapotranspiration demand is low during the winter, so they don't need to irrigate. The idea of this program is to say, yeah, your plants don't need it, so therefore that water that you put on the field will infiltrate through the soil, it will percolate past the root zone, and it will then ultimately recharge groundwater. That is the concept of using flood water for managed aquifer restoration, and that's where the term FloodMAR comes from. So please give this a read. Understand, we've already covered the terms aquifer recharge, aquifer replenishment, aquifer restoration, groundwater banking, and managed aquifer recharge. These are all very basic terms. And give this a read just to understand the basics of why we need such a program. I think we've covered this conceptually already. And you can see going through all the way to the end of chapter 4 here is just a few pages of new material. I think you'll find it interesting. And again, it's a really important action that's going on in California to address our problem of overusing groundwater, and what are we going to do about it. And this is a big program that the Department of Water Resources is implementing in California.